All right, everyone, welcome to our Cisco Lab session. In this session, we are going to learn how to do a Cisco IOS upgrade. Now, let's see what's behind a Cisco IOS upgrade, which is quite simple. So I have a packet tracer here, which just basically shows us the concept behind the Cisco IOS upgrade. Now, in order to make a Cisco IOS upgrade, I need to make sure I have connectivity to the router using a console port, and I also need to make sure I have IP connectivity to a router using an IP network. In this case, I just have an Ethernet link that connects my PC Ethernet port to my router Ethernet port. Okay. Now, the console connection, the serial connection, if you prefer this way, is going to be used to transfer the commands. So every single command I type it in into my terminal emulator, which in this case we're going to be using PuTTY, will be transferred to the router. Okay. Now the router will not download the iOS from the PC using the console serial link. Okay. Now the router needs to have a IP connectivity to the computer in order to download the iOS using an IP infrastructure. So in order to do that, we just basically need to create IP connectivity between the PC and the router, and we are doing that using this network 192.168.100. It's a /24 network. Now I have configured my PC to have the following IP address. So 192.168.101, and the other one is going to be 192.168.100.254. Now, if I configure this correctly, I'm going to be able to test connectivity from my router to the PC using a ping command. Now let's do that. Let's make sure we have everything that we need. The first thing that we need is we need to make sure we have console connection to the device that we want to upgrade. So I have already used a console cable to connect my computer serial port to my router console port. So let's see if this is working. And yes, it is. As we can clearly see from here, the router is blank. So there's no configuration on the router. This is the default mode. It's going to ask me if I want to go to the configuration dialog. Of course, we're going to say no. Okay. We don't want to waste our time. After we say no, we're going to be directed to the user mode configuration. After we are in user mode configuration, we need to go into privilege exec mode at least. Okay. Now the router is still initializing. Now it's done. Now in order for me to go to privilege exec, I need to type the command enable or simply en. And now we are in privilege exec mode. Okay. After that, we need to make sure we already have the IP address assigned to the router. So let's check that. Show IP interface brief. As you can clearly see, there's no IP address configured to interface gigabit 00. So I still don't have IP connectivity to my computer. So I need to have IP connectivity. In order to do that, I'm going to configure an IP address for interface gig 00. Now the IP address is going to be 192.168.100.254 according to the plan. I'm going to hit enter. We of course need the default gate, the subnet mask, sorry. And now we are pretty much done. Now we need to bring the interface up with the command no shutdown. And after that, we can basically test connectivity to the client machine using a ping command. So let's do, sorry, ping 19, oops, sorry, it's coming back alive. Now we test connectivity to the computer using a ping command .1, which is the IP address of the computer. And as we can clearly see, we have connectivity between our client machine and the actual router. Okay. Now, please, guys, every time I say a router in this video, it could be any device, really. It's the same process for upgrading a switch. The only difference is we also still need an IP address on the switch, and we're going to be doing that using a switch virtual interface or SVI. So we need to assign an IP address to the switch SVI, make sure the switch is connected to the computer, make sure they can ping each other, and that's going to be the link used to transfer the iOS image. Alrighty, cool. Now that we know we have connectivity, now that we know we have two links which are healthy, both the IP link and the serial link, we can now proceed to upgrade the iOS. Now, the first step that we need to take is obtaining the latest iOS. Now, if we are talking about Cisco devices, we can just obtain the latest Cisco iOS version by going to software.cisco.com /download, and that's where you're gonna type it in the device model, and we're gonna be able to download the latest iOS image. Okay. Now, some iOS images, they are free. They're simply easy to download. Some of them, they are actually not free. You need to have something called a maintenance contract with Cisco in order to download them. Now, under certain special circumstances, Cisco will actually allow you to request the iOS even though we don't have a maintenance contract. It's a pretty easy procedure. We just need to verify if there's any vulnerability in the iOS that we are currently running. If we do identify some vulnerabilities in the current iOS that we are running, we are then able to request to Cisco technical support, and then they will just basically send us a link with the latest iOS. I'm going to leave in the description of this video a link that we can basically check if the current iOS version that we are running has any vulnerability. If you run the test and you identify that there's a vulnerability with the iOS version that you're running, you can then just request Cisco for the download link of the latest iOS without the vulnerabilities. Cool. Now let's move on. I have already obtained these iOS image that I need for this router. It's a 2900 router, so it's just basically the latest iOS version I could download. Now we need to basically save these iOS somewhere, and I just decided to save into my games drive, which is letter E. Now I have put it inside a folder called Cisco IOS, and this is the folder that I'm going to use to save every single iOS version that I currently have. All right. Okay, let's move on. Now we obtain the iOS. We need this Tftp application to transfer the files. So we just basically need to be running a Tftp server. Now I'm going to leave it in the link below as well, a link for you to download this application called Tftp64. After you download the folder of Tftp64, you basically have an executable file that will basically execute the Tftp64 application. So after we download Tftp64, I have already included it in my desktop. So I already have Tftp64. Once you download the folder, it will come up with all of this that you need. We just basically need the Tftp64 executable file. I'll just run it. It's going to ask me if I want to give access. I'm going to allow access to all of my networks. Cool, I'm going to close this. Now we basically have the Tftp application running. Now it's just a matter of selecting the interface that we want to make this a server of. Now, of course, we want to go with the interface that is connected to the router. In my case, it's my 192.168.100.1 interface. Now, I also need to specify the current directory where all my Cisco IOS images are going to be stored. I'm going to go browse. It's in my games drive, Cisco IOS, and that's where I have all the images that I needed. Now, we don't actually need to start the Tftp application. Once it's opened, it's already running, it's already using the current directory, it's already using the appropriate interface. Now, it's just a matter of proceeding. Now, we're going to go to step number 3. Before we do the iOS upgrade, we're going to check the current version that we are running. In order to do that, just going to type it in show version, okay? And that's going to display a whole bunch of information about the device. And what we actually want to know is the iOS version, which is going to be right at the beginning. Yeah, so this is exactly what we want to know. We want to know the Cisco iOS version. So the Cisco iOS version current running on this device is 15.2 minor version 4. So I'm going to copy this. So with the right button, and I'm going to paste in my txt file. And this is exactly the Cisco iOS version that we are currently running. Okay, let me delete this. I don't want to type this here. Now, what we need to do is we need to compare these both versions. As we can clearly see, this is version 15. This is version 15 as well, but this one is 15.7 and this one 15.2. So this is a slightly newest version compared to this one. All right. So what we want to do is we want to make sure we will upgrade it to the newest one. So in order to do that, we basically need to copy the image, which is already in my Cisco iOS folder, to the router. And how do we do that? Now that we have IP connectivity, it's just a matter of going to the router itself and typing the command copy Tftp into flash. Okay. And then I'll just hit enter. And now I need to specify the IP address of my Tftp server. In this case, is the IP address of the PC, which is 192.168.100.1. Okay. I'll hit enter. Now we need to specify the source file name. I have it here this way because it's easier for me to copy paste instead of typing it. I'm going to do Ctrl+C in this newest iOS version name, and I'm going to paste it in here with the right button of the mouse. Yep, done. Now just hit enter, and then it's asking me if I want to keep the same destination file name. I'll just hit enter again to say yes. Now there's an issue. There's something going on here. It says it cannot locate the file. Let's just double check if the file is actually there. Cisco iOS interface 101. Cool. Just double check if I misspelled something. Yeah. Okay, guys, so as we can clearly see here, when I try to run the command, it wasn't able to find the iOS image. Let's check it out if the iOS image is in the appropriate location. As we can clearly see here, it needs to be in E, Cisco iOS. I'm gonna open my folder, and I just need to include the iOS inside of the folder. I'm just gonna drag drop. Okay. Now, if you already put the appropriate iOS inside the folder, this is not going to happen, all right? So let's do it again. I'm gonna go back, copy TFTP flash, IP address of my server, name of the iOS image. I want the latest one. Yep. Destination is gonna be the same file name. And now we can clearly see that this transfer is happening now, okay? Now, it's gonna take a while. I'm gonna pause the video a little bit, and then I'll be back in a few seconds when this is nearly done. All right, everyone, we're back. So the transfer is now nearly complete, as we can clearly see here. Just a matter of pretty much a few seconds more. We're nearly done. Now, after we copy the Cisco iOS image, we're going to verify if the image is now saved in Flash. So in order to do that, I'm going to do a show Flash, double column, and now we can clearly see we have both Cisco iOS images in our Flash memory. Okay? Now, if you want to still save the old iOS version just in case, if you want to, have a backup of the previous iOS, you can basically pretty much do the reverse. Instead of doing copy TFTP flash, if we type it in copy flash to TFTP, we're going to be able to specify the iOS version that we want to backup, and then this iOS is going to be saved into the same directory that we specified in our TFTP server application. And this is exactly what I did. So I basically ran the copy flash to TFTP, and then I just got myself a backup of the previous iOS version. Okay. Now you can do that if you want. If you don't want to do it, you can just save the newest iOS and just basically forget about the old version. Okay. Now what we need to do next is, Now that we have the iOS, the newest iOS in our flash memory, we can do two optional things. The first one of them, we can verify these iOS just to make sure it hasn't been altered, just to make sure it's integral, okay? So we do an integrity check. Now the algorithm is MD5, and in order to verify the file, we can do a verify/MD5, and then we type it in flash. The name of the file, I already have the name of the file, I'm going to copy paste, okay? And if we hit enter, we're going to start the integrity check. So the MD5 algorithm is going to be running, and if the file integrity can be verified, we're just going to see an output saying that the file hasn't been altered, that the file is okay. So let's wait a little bit. This should be quicker than downloading the iOS image. A few seconds. Now, after we verify the integrity of the iOS image that we just downloaded, our next step is also optional. We can just basically delete the previous iOS image. Okay. Now, because I don't want to occupy my space, the space of my flash memory, I'm going to delete it. Now, as we can clearly see here, it's done. So that means it's all good with the file. Now, what we're going to do is we are going to delete the old file. So delete flash. And then we specify the old file name. So that's why I showed the version in the beginning. I'm going to copy paste as well. Okay. I'm going to hit enter. And now I will just basically get rid of the old iOS version. Okay. Confirm. Now it's pretty much done. We can verify that again with the show flash one more time. And now we can clearly see we only have one iOS image in our flash memory. Now it's just a matter of telling the router that next time it boots, it should use the newest iOS image. Now we're just going to do that by typing in the command boot system flash, and we're going to specify the newest iOS version. And copy paste, so I don't want to type the whole thing again. Okay, enter. Oops, sorry, we need to be in global configuration mode. So I'm going to type it in conft, and we're going to do boot system flash, and then we're going to specify the iOS image file name. Hit enter, and then we can save the config, and after that we can just basically reload the device and then show the new version. And as we're going to be able to see, the new version will be the one that we have just installed. Okay. Now this is the way we do the iOS upgrade. I hope this video is helpful to you guys, and I'll see you guys next time. We'll do a reload. Yep, and I'll see you guys next time.